guys, it's Jessica from Peace Love Books, and today I'm here with 10 books you have to read before the end of the year. We are down to 3 months left. I almost said 4, but we are less than 3 months away from the end of the year, and there are so many good books that have come out this year or that people have been reading and raving about that I've read and loved, and I think you need to read them. So I would ask you to prioritize these books. Before we get to the books, though, I want to thank the sponsor of this video, which is Ava Miles. The Paris Roommates actually releases today, and this one takes place in Paris. I love a book that takes place in Europe or with traveling. This one does focus on Thea. She had studied abroad at a work-study program back when she was younger in Paris, and she made lifelong friends and always dreamed of this really big life for herself. But now she's a baker, not living that dream life. She just kind of feels stuck, and they get word that their host mother from when they were studying abroad has fallen sick, and so her and her roommates all go back to Paris to help out her restaurant. Thea pretty much gets a makeover from her roommates and meets someone and starts falling for him and doesn't know what she wants to do with her life, has to make some choices. So there's a lot of friendship, lots of travel, lots of food, lots of romance in this book. So definitely check out The Paris Roommates, coming out today. And thank you so much to Ava Miles for sponsoring this video. The first book I have to recommend is one that I actually read this year because it was the majority favorite from last year. I did a video where I did a reading vlog, reading Booktube's favorite romances that they read last year, and how I did that was I watched a bunch of videos and picked the most common ones. So they were like actually people's favorite, and that one is Binding 13. I have to complete this series. I know I have to continue on reading. I really, really want to, but this one is so good. And I feel like it's not a new release. It's been around for a while. I don't know. There's 2 copyright dates in here, so it's been out for a while, a few years, and I feel like everybody's just discovering this book and everybody has been reading it over the past more like year or so. I feel like I've seen it around a lot more, and this one is so emotional because the heroine comes from an abusive household, and I think she has 2 brothers, and her older brother I know gets a book with his girlfriend that he has in this book, but she is bullied really, really badly in her school, so her mom takes her and puts her into this private school, and she meets our hero, who is a really good rugby player, and he's dealing with an injury though and trying to play through it and doesn't know what his life is going to hold for him, and they start falling for each other. It's so good. I need to continue on the series, but they are so long, and just like holding these books, the font is tiny, and I don't know if I want to wait until they're traditionally published to read them or just go to order the UK editions that are already out because they're floppy, and these are just like massive bricks to hold. I have all the indie copies, but they're just like a lot. But this was really good. I loved the romance between them, and it was very serious, but just like you get really, really attached to these characters. So highly recommend picking this up if you haven't yet before the end of the year. I'm gonna go ahead and get an obvious one out of the way. This is one of my favorite books of the year, if not my favorite book of the year. Forget Me Not by Julie Soto, I'm obsessed with, and it's so good. A Second Chance. It revolves around a wedding. We have a past timeline when they were falling in love when they first met, working at weddings, and a present timeline where it's been years after they broke up and they haven't spoken to each other, and the hero is so broody and pining and amazing, and we don't know what broke them up. And now they have to talk again because they have to work at a wedding together. She's a wedding planner, he's a florist. He is tattooed and angsty and brooding, and I love it so, so much. So Teddy Hamilton narrated this audiobook, so if you are thinking about the audio, highly, highly recommend picking that one up. It is so good. I am obsessed. I want to read everything Julie Soto writes. This is her first traditionally published book. She wrote fan fiction before, which I already have downloaded to my Kindle, so if you want a super angsty time, read this one. Another author that I feel like really exploded at the end of last year and all through this year, and this one is my favorite by her though, so I really want more people to read this specific one, is Bittersweet Memories by Katerina Mora. Everybody loves her Windsor series, and the previous series she did, I don't remember what it's called, but she has a new series out right now. I haven't read the last 2 books in that series because one just released and I'm a little behind, but this one's Amnesia. And my favorite, it's definitely angsty. They fall in love when she's in high school, and she is like just graduating high school, and things are happening, and they end up having to both live in a homeless shelter together, and then she gets hit by a car. He loses track of her, she loses her memory, and he is like dedicated his entire life to tracking her down, becomes this millionaire guy, and they are reunited, but she is off limits, and it is so good. When I tell you, it is so good. I love a time jump and I love amnesia, and this had both of those, and she was off limits, which is also another of my favorite tropes. So if you want to read Katerina Mora, this one is definitely my favorite by her, but I also love The Wrong Bride. So either one of those, you can't go wrong, but definitely read her. My next one is because I want everybody to become obsessed with the author that I'm currently like exploring, and that is going to be The Obsession by Nora Roberts. I have had so much fun reading Nora Roberts because I have been loving romantic suspense. I've always been into more action-packed romances, like mafia romances, motorcycle romances, stuff like that, but I never really truly delved into romantic suspense, specifically Nora Roberts. I've read like those mass markets of like those guys that are in these like mercenary groups. I've read some of those and they were good, but Nora is so good. Our heroine's father was a bad person and was murdering people, and she figured it out, so she turns him in, and now she doesn't really put down roots because people know who her father is and know her because of that, so she's kind of taken on this new identity. She's finally decided to have this home, put roots down for herself, and there is someone there that won't take no for an answer when it comes to like being around her, and I was annoyed with him in the beginning, I will say. It's the love interest, but I did end up really liking him, and things happen. I don't want to spoil what happens in this book, but I love like just like the whole atmosphere of her books. They're very small town, but with romantic suspense. I loved the setup for this book, and it was just really good. And she has to live with the shadow of what her dad did, so I just had so much fun. I also loved Black Hills, but I thought I'd recommend this one because I've talked about Black Hills a lot. The next one is one that I read for the first time this year that I feel like is having its moment, because people are obsessed with this, and it was fun. I really liked it, and I feel like if you want to keep up with what everyone's reading, you should read this. That is Haunting Adeline by H.G. Carlton. This one's a stalker romance. I listened to the audiobook. It was Teddy Hamilton. He can do no wrong, and it was a wild ride. I want to do a video where I talk about like the wildest romances I've read, because Does It Hurt by H.G. Carlton would definitely be one of those. H.G. Carlton has a mind like no other. Zaid Meadows is our stalker, and he's obsessed with our heroine, and he lets her know it, and he will literally kill anybody who touches her. She is also dealing with this mystery of her grandmother lived in her house who also had a stalker, and it has a cliffhanger where I'm thinking the next book is going to be very, very dark. I haven't read book 2 yet, but if you are interested in dark romance, I think this is definitely a staple that you should read. Then I have Yours Truly by Abby Jimenez. I have been absolutely loving Abby Jimenez lately. I loved Part of Your World last year. It was one of my favorite books of the year. This one is so good. If you just want a cozy book where you just want to hug the characters and never let them go, that's what this is. The hero and heroine both work at a hospital together. The heroine wants to get like whatever it's called, like the lead doctor. She wants some sort of promotion, and he comes in and he's gonna be part of the running, so she really resents him and is mean to him, and he's all like, I'm just here to be a doctor. I didn't like want to step on anybody's toes. He is just a cinnamon roll hero and falls so hard for her, and he has anxiety, and the way that she makes sure she does things for him because of his anxiety is just so amazing. Just the detail she pays attention to and how she really cares about him. I loved it so much. This was so good, and she's dealing with a lot with her own identity because her ex cheated on her, and everybody still wants them to be together, and she's like, no. Oh yeah, because she's getting a divorce. I think he cheated on her. Maybe he didn't cheat on her. She's getting a divorce though, but I just love this one, and definitely recommend checking out Abby Jimenez if you have not yet. The next one is because this one's my favorite by the author so far, and I though think that her next one's going to beat this one, but read this one before the next one comes out, and that is going to be King of Pride by Anna Huang. This book, she writes the billionaire hero so well, and Kai is just like quiet and so smart and just watches, and I loved him. Our heroine's also kind of from like the opposite sides of the track. She works at the bar of like the exclusive club that Kai goes to, and they start seeing each other, and there's just so many scenes in here that I love, and she plays a piano, and he is very, very prideful, so he gets mad when people are better than him, and she might be better at the piano than him, and he's like, this cannot happen. So I really love those different aspects of this, and they really push each other out of their comfort zones, and it was so good. I definitely want to reread this. I don't think I'll reread it before I get to the next book, but this one was so good, and I'm just like obsessed with the series and think everybody needs to read it. It's so good. I do have a historical on here, and now I will say this is not a consensus among my friends. Some people have not liked this. I absolutely loved it. I thought it was the best time ever because it's based off of a movie that I love, and that is An Earl to Remember by Stacey Reid. I've not read a ton of historicals this year, but this one I could not stop listening to the audiobook. I was like, this is so good. Our heroine's a chef, and she's taking care of all of her sisters, and she gets a job on this like cruise ship, and the hero is there, and she mistakenly shows up in his room, and he thinks she's there to be with him, and so he kisses her and really likes her, and then she's like freaked out. She leaves. His mistress gets upset because she was not there to be with them, and so he ends up firing the heroine because his mistress is upset, but then his mistress tosses him overboard. He shows up at her town, washes ashore with no memory, but he remembers her, but only in the physical sense. He's like, I've been with you, and she's like, holy crap, like what do I do? She's gonna ruin her reputation, so she says, yeah, we got married. And so he has to act like her husband. He's obviously very wealthy and doesn't do like manual labor like he's having to do around her house, very similar to Overboard. I loved it. It was so fun. He constantly called her my wife even after he knew like the truth. He's like, well, you're my wife, aren't you? And I love that. It was so fun. A very quick read. I read it in a day. Definitely recommend reading this. The last two, I do not know where my copy of this book went. I had it. It is somewhere in my library that I can't find, but Salt in the Wound by Sierra Simone. I have not yet read Salt Kiss, but if you want a short read to set you up for Salt Kiss, this one is I don't even know how to describe it. The heroine really wants to be a nun. So Sierra Simone definitely plays with religion very interestingly, and I like her whole saint, sinner, priest books with that series, and this one the heroine really wants to be a nun. Her uncle is a cardinal and she lost her mom, and her dad's a very famous banker, and her dad wants her to marry the owner of a sex club so that he can get information about people from the owner of a sex club because he knows a lot of people and like trades and secrets, stuff like that, and she's horrified. She's like, no, I want to be a nun, and like, you know I want to be a nun. And she also trains in like knife fighting and combat and stuff like that, and so she has to give in and marry this guy, and so they're kind of like courting each other for a year, and she is like, what do I do? Because I actually like really want to sleep with him, but like I want to be a nun, and she has to get married to him. And so we do know this is going to be MFM though, because we meet the bodyguard at the end of this book, and that is what Salt Kiss is going to be about. So this book is really, really interesting, and it's short and you'll fly through it, and it makes you really intrigued for the other books, so I would highly recommend picking this one up. And the last one I have is one that's going to change your life. This one, I feel like my reading has not been the same since I've read it. There is nothing that has really captured my attention, and it's very frustrating, but just forget I said that because you have to read this book. It is Manacled. This book is a fan fiction. It's free to read. It's on AO3. It is Draco and Hermione fan fiction. It's kind of like The Handmaid's Tale. Hermione is captured. The Order has lost the war against Voldemort, and she is put into this program where she has to have babies with Draco, not willingly, in order to provide him heirs. So it's so good. It is so good. They fall in love, and there's so many secrets in here, and just like a very all-consuming, passionate, obsessive romance. I bawled at the end of this book. Like, I was ruined forever after reading this book, and I will never be the same. And I highly recommend you go through the same experience I did. So definitely pick this one up. It is amazing, and I know people have been reading it for years and loving it, and I'm very, very late to the game, but please read it. You will never be the same. And those are the books that you should pick up before the end of the year. Let me know if you have any recommendations of books like you have to read this and that you've been seeing everybody reading and loving and you agree. Let me know. And a huge thank you again to Ava Miles for sponsoring this video. Make sure you pick up The Paris Roommate, definitely for a European adventure where you're reevaluating your life, taking chances, taking risks. I can definitely relate to that. I recently went through a very huge life change where I changed careers, reevaluated what I wanted to do. It's a very scary experience, but I would have loved being in Paris doing that. She does fall in love with a gorgeous lawyer as well, so definitely check this out. It has come out today, so pick up The Paris Roommates. And that's all I have. As always, thank you so much for watching and have a good day. Bye.